Book of Job, Chapter 7. Is not the life of man upon earth a state of trial, and his existence as that of a hireling by day? Or as a servant that fears his master, and one who has grasped a shadow, or as a hireling waiting for his pay? So have I also endured months of vanity, and nights of pain have been appointed me. Whenever I lie down, I say, when will it be day? And whenever I rise up, again I say, when will it be evening? And I am full of pains, from evening to morning. And my body is covered with loathsome worms, and I waste away, scraping off clods of dust from my eruption. And my life is lighter than a word, and has perished in vain hope. Remember then that my life is breath, and mine eye shall not yet again see good. The eye of him that sees me shall not see me again. Thine eyes are upon me, and I am no more. I am as a cloud that is cleared away from the sky. For if a man go down to the grave, he shall not come up again, and he shall surely not return to his own house, neither shall his place know him any more. Then neither will I refrain my mouth. I will speak, being in distress, being in anguish. I will disclose the bitterness of my soul. Am I a sea or a serpent that thou hast set a watch over me? I said that my bed should comfort me, and I would privately counsel with myself on my couch. Thou scarest me with dreams, and dost terrify me with visions. Thou wilt separate my life from my spirit, and yet keep my bones from death. For I shall not live forever, that I should patiently endure. Depart from me, for my life is vain. For what is man that thou hast magnified him, or that thou givest heed to him? Wilt thou visit him till the morning, and judge him till the time of rest? How long dost thou not let me alone, nor let me go, until I shall swallow down my spittle? If I have sinned, what shall I be able to do? O thou that understandest the mind of men, why hast thou made me as thine accuser? And why am I a burden to thee? Why hast thou not forgotten my iniquity, and purged my sin? But now I shall depart to the earth. In the morning Shlomo. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic and Job chapter 7. There are 21 verses in this chapter. Beginning with the first verse, we have our first difference, and it's a huge one. It says here, in the Septuagint, is not the life of man upon earth a state of trial? Mind is blown. Why? What a poignant yet poignant, I don't know how to pronounce that. What a poignant yet beautiful philosophical view on life. Our life, our existence, this human existence on earth is a state of trial. From birth to grave. Versus the Masoretic stating the following, is there not an appointed time to man upon earth? So this is rather self-evident. This is stating the obvious. Okay, yeah, we live for a time. Okay, so what? So nothing, I guess. Verse 2, significant difference. Or as a servant that fears his master. So he's talking about the dynamics between humans and God. And one who has grasped a shadow. Versus as a servant earnestly desires the shadow. Why would he want the shadow? Does it mean that Job longs for death? Do we long for death? I don't think that's the case. But he's describing a dynamic here between the creator and the created. And then the experience of life being like trying to grasp a shadow, which you can't do. It's rather vain. This goes contrary to what he said in chapter 6, if that is the case. Verse 3, endured. I've endured versus made to possess. So one is past, he went through this, versus future. He's going to possess months of vanity, so it hasn't happened yet. Verse 4, whenever I lie down, I say, when will it be day? And whenever I rise up again, I say, when will it be evening? I am full of pains from evening to morning. The Masoretic renders it this way. When I lie down, I say, when shall I arise? And the night be gone. And I am full of tossings to and fro unto the dawning of the day. So the Septuagint is providing more sense to what Job was originally trying to say, what he was saying. It makes sense, it gives us sense given the context of his ailments. Okay, also the section is, there's an omission. Whenever I rise up, again I say, when will it be evening? That was omitted. And the significant difference, it says pain, night of pain versus tossings. So he's going through real pain, not simply insomnia, sleeplessness. He's tossing in the bed. That's not what's happening. He's going through pain. I would say severe pain if we're going to classify this pain. Verse 5, an omission. Loathsome worms versus I am become loathsome. So that's an important detail. That he actually has these worms on his body, and he can see these worms. They're not microscopic. He's able to see them with his own eyes. There's an omission of I waste away. So he's wasting away. It could imply being emaciated. Perhaps he's lost a lot of weight as well. And the footnote for this verse says the corruption of worms. So regardless, there are worms present. My eruption versus my skin is broken. Verse 6, lighter than a word versus swifter than a weaver's shuttle or braid. So he's saying his life is fragile. It can be just taken away quicker than, just like a word that is in one ear, gone the other, out the other ear, versus swifter, so his days are quicker than a weaver's shuttle, weaver's braid. Vain hope versus without hope. So no, he has hope. It's just he's got a vain hope. It's a hope that is simply, superficial. It's not substantial. There's no substance in it. It's like an empty promise, you could say. He believes in, he has a hope, but then he placed it in a vain thing. It's like hope deferred, empty hope. That's how he feels. That's his expression, his emotion. So you can see this evolution of Job evolving, maturing as a person throughout the narrative. Because we see that presently he's saying, okay, my hope is vain. He also makes an observation or makes a verbal statement that he's not going to live again. We're going to see that and further in this chapter. Verse 9 is an addition of consumed. Clouds are not consumed. They just go away, like they vanish away. They don't get eaten. Verse 10, omit, omission of surely. Verse 11, another omission, being in distress. So yes, he's in distress as well as anguish. An addition of my spirit. Disclose, share. I'll share the bitterness of my soul versus complain. I'm going to complain of my complaints. So Job in the Masoretic is characterized as a complainer. Okay, in the Septuagint, he's simply in pain, and he's going to share it. He's going to share what's in his soul, this feeling of bitterness. He's not complaining, he's just expressing what he's going through. It's like a person who's mourning will grieve. A person who's happy, they're going to be joyful, they're going to sing. In his situation, he's going to disclose the bitterness of his soul. That's human. There's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't even say that's a bad trait to have. He's just venting, you could say. Verse 12, serpent versus whale. Verse 13, a significant difference. I would privately counsel with myself versus shall ease my complaint. More complaints. Couch can mean bed, but also can be euphemism for the act, coitus perhaps. Maybe he was trying to comfort himself with his wife. I don't know. That's a wild guess. I'm not sure. I think that's a little explicit. If he was referring to that, maybe because he said privately counsel with myself on his couch. So he's by himself. So I don't want to get into that. It could be the wrong direction. I think it's just talking about his bed, on his bed, because he wants to sleep. He wants to sleep and just escape. He wants to escape from his reality. That's why he's saying, when it's daytime, I can't wait to go back to sleep. And when it's evening, I can't wait for it to be a day. He just wants to get it over with. Verse 15, because perhaps dreams are better than reality. His reality is a nightmare. Verse 15, big difference. Thou wilt separate life from my spirit, and yet keep my bones from death. What does it say in the Masoretic? So that my soul chooseth strangling, and death rather than my life. So Job is merely stating his experience in the Septuagint. He's not expressing that he wants to die. In the Masoretic, again, continuous theme throughout the Masoretic that Job is suicidal. He's fatalistic. He just can't wait to die. I'm not saying he wants to continue his pain, but he's certainly not longing for death the way the Masoretic is portraying it. It's a completely different tone in the Septuagint. I think you can read that for yourself. That he's just stating the facts that who separates life from spirit, that's Elohim. Who keeps his bones from death, Elohim is one preserving his life. He acknowledges this. he's not saying I want to strangle myself, or this is how I choose to die, by strangling. That's not what he's saying. Verse 16, big difference, another one. My life is vain. He's saying this existence, man's life, specifically mine, is vanity. It's all just superficial. It's for nothing, it seems. Versus, I loathe it. I hate my life. So he's saying in the Septuagint, rightly so, that his life feels like it's meaningless. It's without substance. It's just, this is how I'm going to go out. It's vain. Versus, I hate my life. He's blaming God. I hate this. It's your fault. I hate my life. You've caused me to hate and really despise living and the life you've given me. It reeks of one who's ungrateful, and not just ungrateful, complete, opposite spectrum, joyful, and then neutral, not, indifferent, then one who really hates his life. He can't wait to die. He loves death, you could say, by implication, by hating life. And this is a gross mischaracterization of this man. The Septuagint frames him in the right way, who he really was. Represents his heart more correctly in his emotional state. Verse 17, or that thou givest heed to him, versus, and that thou shouldest set thine heart upon him. Okay, pay attention to, this is verse 17. So God is paying attention to man versus setting his heart's focus on him. Verse 18, and judge him till the time of rest versus try him every moment to test or investigate. So the difference, I didn't write it here, but the difference is, in my opinion, Judgment Day. It's a day of judgment versus being tested all the time throughout life. Always, pretty much perpetually. I'm not saying God doesn't do that. He does test us, but that's not what Job is saying. He's saying, are you going to judge him until he dies? Maybe it could be talking about, number one, perpetually being tested. Could be alluding to what the Masoretic is saying, that you're judging me until I'm dead. It's not going to stop till I'm dead. Or I'm going to be judged until I die, like until the moment of death. Death has to come first before Judgment Day, is what he's saying. It's like what was said in the New Testament in the Brit Hadashah, that referring to Lazarus' sister, while she was speaking to Yeshua, she said, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection. So it's referring to that. So perhaps he's referring to the resurrection, the time of rest, which the resurrection is followed with the day of judgment of all who's ever lived. Resurrection of glorification, and there's a resurrection to condemnation. Verse 19, let me go versus depart from me. So let me go, let me be free to go versus a redundant statement. Depart from me, let me alone, right? Redundancy. Okay, next is verse 20, and we have a huge difference, perhaps even a massive difference. So let's get ready for this. It says, there's an omission of if I have sinned versus I have sinned. So Job he's not confessing that he's sinned. In fact, he does not even know what his sin is. We just know that for a matter of fact. He even asks, what have I done if I have sinned, right? Elohim even called Job blameless. So we know that no, he did not sin. And he's not confessing that he sinned. In the Masoretic, it seems to be the case, but that's not actually what happened historically from the Septuagint perspective. If I could say Septuagintal perspective. And then there's an addition of unto thee. Unto thee. Okay, why is this a massive difference? Because sin and the consequences of sin would be the consequence of his sin. They're saying cause and effect here. I've done this, so that's why I'm getting what I deserve in the Masoretic. Whereas the Septuagint is saying there is no cause, but there's effect. This has to do with Job's, potentially has to do with his salvation and his eternal life. So did he sin or did he not sin? That's why it's important. His life and his soul, his eternal life, is weighed in the balance, essentially, on this statement, if I have sinned versus I have sinned. He will be judged. We will all be judged for all things we've done and said. So that's why it's important. And one is saying he did sin. The other one, the Septuagint, is saying he did not, but he's not confessing he did or didn't. He's just saying, if I have sinned. Again, he doesn't even know what his sin is, so it's not fair to him. Another significant difference in the same verse, O thou that understandest the mind of men, versus preserver of men. Why hast thou made me as thine accuser, versus why hast thou set me as a mark, an object of attack against thee? Significant difference, again, in the same verse, a lot of them in verse 20. Why am I a burden to thee, versus so that I am a burden to myself. So the Septuagint, in my opinion, hits harder, weighs heavier, especially if you have the heart of a loving parent. This is your child telling you this. Why? I don't think any parent wants to hear that their child tells them, why am I a burden to you? Of course you're not a burden, you're a blessing to me. But that's the way he feels. Why do I feel like a burden to you? Am I a burden to you? You could be asking, am I a burden to you? Versus, I'm a burden to myself. So how is he a burden to himself? He's the one causing his own problems? That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make as much sense. Verse 21, an addition of, and you shall seek me. Okay, so I just have a closing statement on this chapter. Since most of the world uses the Masoretic text for Job in this case, it's no wonder that Job is such a grossly misunderstood character, greatly misunderstood, because he has been mischaracterized as being suicidal, a hateful man who longs for death and even hates his own life, even calls himself a burden. I'm a burden to you, God, Father. Whereas the Septuagint reveals Job as more of a philosopher, trying to make sense of not only his life but his sufferings. One who has patiently borne his afflictions. He didn't deserve any of them. Yet he does not understand the why. That's the big question. Why? He's seeking the answer as to why, with the utmost respect towards his creator, his master. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time. Until next time, look at Job chapter 8. Until then, I bid you all Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, peace be unto you, and Maranatha.